Welcome to Unpacking Within. My name is Cam. For those of you that are new here, we really like to practice transparency, truth, and living in your truth. And today I have a very, very special guest with me. Her name is Morgan, who's so very near and dear to my heart. By day, Morgan is actually a HR Diva, as I like to call her. But during the daytime, she plays my sister, and only my sister. I'm kidding. I got to share her with a few. But hello, Morgan. Welcome.
Hi, Cam. You like that?
How are you today?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you?
I'm doing good. Thank you. I'm so grateful that you have agreed to spend time with me for this short while. And I'm so excited to, one, hear your perspective on all things HR. And I'm also excited just to share with people that are out there that are curious about HR, why it is the way that it is, some best tip and help and some advice. So thank you for your professional background and thank you for what you're about to drop.
Yes, I'm so happy to be here, and anything for you. I'm glad that you thought of me to bring you on this platform. So thank you. I'm so excited.
I love it. I will say that I always like to open up to kind of give you a little bit of backstory on my guests that I do bring on. Morgan and I go way back.
Yes.
Morgan, would you like to share?
Oh, I would love
how we
to.
met?
It would be my most pleasure, my highest honor. So I met Kamir. So I met his brother and sister first in high school, and I did not know Kamir existed. And I met him when he was, oh my goodness, I don't know, how old were you? Were you like?
I was young.
You were young.
I was in middle school.
I took him to Buffalo Wild Wings, y'all. And I was like, oh, let's go to Buffalo Wild Wings. And when I tell you he would not order anything, it was like he just was like, no, I'm not hungry. Thank you. Okay. I was like, no, get this. And oh my goodness, from day one, I just fell in love with him because he's just always been just a joy, just so vibrant. And literally, if you know him and you know all his siblings, they all have like similar personalities. They are just the fun, welcoming people. And I moved to Chattanooga and I didn't have any family there. And this became my extended family. So the Harris and the Dunnigans.
Yeah. Shout out to Dante.
Shout out to you. So we go way back to when he was working at Little Caesars Pizza and I was picking him up from work.
At 16 years old.
At 16. And we just my family has accepted Kamir as an extension of our family too. And our families are just so intertwined. And so blood could not make us even more closer. And I just adore Kamir. So I'm so happy to be here.
It's so funny how one, thank you. I find it so hilarious how, you know how they say you can't really choose the family that you're born into, but as you get older, you really start to choose your family. Yes. And who you consider your family, whether it be blood or not.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And this is my chosen family because you meet a lot of people when you're younger and some people fade apart, but the people that you choose to stick around and keep in your lives, those are the people that are to me, it's sometimes they're closer than your blood relatives. And Kamir can never get rid of me. So
ever.
This is my baby. I'm on his platform, but this is my baby right here. So I'm just happy to be here. And I love Kamir. And to know Kamir is to love him.
Yes. Kamir, whatever.
Yes.
I wanted to ask you, so before you moved to Chattanooga, before you kind of became an extension of our family, where were you? Where were you born?
Oh, yeah. So I was born in Cincinnati, Ohio. So shout out to the Midwest, Cincinnati, since my mama had me. And my grandma actually moved to Chattanooga when I was in the 8th grade. And honestly, I had never heard of Chattanooga in my life. I thought the name was so funny. I thought it was a made up place. And then my mom, she fell onto hard times. And naturally, we followed my grandma. And my grandma talked how life was so great there. It was clean. It's just a different pace of life. And so when I was in the 9th grade, we relocated to Chattanooga in the middle of my school year. And which was so crazy because my mom didn't unenroll us out of school. So when I got to Tennessee and I got enrolled in school, I had failed all of my classes. So that's how I ended up going to Howard.
Oh, wow.
And
9th grade?
In 9th grade, at the end of it was probably March when I was enrolled into Howard. And I actually had to interview to get into the school because it wasn't in my zone. It was Lookout Valley was my zone.
Okay.
And principal at the time, her name was Dr. Swafford. She was like, well, why should I let you come to school? And I was like, because I have good grades. I'm a great student. She was like, no, you don't. And I was like, yes, I do. She was
gagged you.
She gagged me.
She was one of those gaggers too. If you know Dr. Swafford, like she had a very mean stature. Like she walked up straight and tall, and like I think she
Yes.
always wore like suits.
Yes.
She always had a silk press. You did not play with Dr. Swafford, okay?
At all.
And those from Chattanooga know.
You know. If you know, you know.
If you know, you know.
And so she was like, I'm looking at your report card and you have all Fs. You have zeros in every class. And I was like, this has got to be a mistake. I'm a straight A student. So I literally had to prove myself to get into Howard. And I was just like, oh my gosh, this is so crazy. So I came into the school thinking that it was this ritzy private school, a magnet school. And when I got there, it was nothing like I thought it was. But I'm so glad that I went to the school because it gave me, I would have never met you or anybody. Like, and your sister, Mercedes, was my very first friend. She actually weirded me out because she was the first person who spoke to me on the last day of school. And she was like, I want to be friends. And I was just like, why is this girl talking to me? Aww. And I'm from the Midwest, so it's not no Southern hospitality or anything like that. So I was just like, why are people speaking to me? And they don't even know me. And then my grandma was like, that's Southern hospitality, Morgan. You'll get used to it. And then I never saw her again because it was the summer. And then the next school year, she remembered me. Aww. And then I realized, whoa, there's more than one of you all.
I've never heard this story, by the way.
So I met Michael. And I didn't know that they were related. And they told me that, yes, we are related. And I was like, no, you're not. Y'all have different last names. And then they were like, you and your sister have different last names too. I said,
period. Gagged you.
I said, oh, okay. Okay. All right. You got it. And then I met their family. I met their mom. And we just been close ever since. Like, I love your mom to pieces. And she had taught me a lot of things. She even let me live with her one summer. And so, I was going through my own issues with my own family life, and she never turned me away, and she just always made me feel a part of the family. So that goes a long way, especially as a young adult trying to figure things out. I lost my dad, and your mom, the day that my dad passed away, I was at your mom's house, and my grandma was like, go in there and wake somebody up. And I woke your mom up, and she was like, are you okay? Like, let it out. And I was just like, I didn't want to tell anybody because I was like, I don't want to bring the vibe down. And your mom was a mother to me. And so that was like unexpected for me because, I never had lost a parent or anybody that was like very close to me. And so like that to me is like solidified our family ship because your mom was a mom to me in a time of need where my mom wasn't close to me or my dad was gone. So,
I, one, have never heard this story, but two, I'm so glad you told it because now we got it on record.
Yes.
And I do remember when I think you were kind of like back and forth to college too, where like you would come there.
Yep.
And I think Mercedes and Michael and Jeffrey were like working at like the Lookouts or something like that.
Oh yeah.
Or was this past it?
That was earlier.
Okay.
This was a little late because that was my dad passed in 2012, so I was going into my senior year in college.
Okay. And I remember, so her college was about a good hour and 45 minutes from Chattanooga. It was in Atlanta. She went to Agnes Scott.
Yeah, the Back Ring Mafia.
Hey. And you would bring your friends to Chattanooga and like they would hang out. And I guess like we kind of all really became like family. But I say, and I asked that question because I wanted people to really understand how close you are to our family and truly how much you mean to me. So again, just from me to you, just thank you for being here. And thank you for just sharing your light with me in the world.
Thank you. And it's very rare that I bring people to my family, whether extended or immediate.
I know.
And so for me to bring you around the people that I love the most is a big deal. And that means like we locked in.
Twins.
Where have you been?
Hey. Well, so as I mentioned, this episode will be about HR, layoffs, faith, love. I mentioned earlier today that Morgan by day is a human resources professional. And on my last episode, I actually shared with you all that I got laid off like 2 weeks ago. I will say I am okay, though. I'm okay. I feel optimistic. I feel happy. I feel loved. I feel angry, hurt, sad. I feel so many emotions. But at the end of the day, I am okay. I feel like this has definitely been a break that my body and that my mind has needed. And I feel like when you go from working really straight, like out of high school, when I was like turning 19, I found a job. And then that really just became my job up until now. So like I would have almost been with the company for 10 years this year. So it was like really taking to the time and taking to all of the years. I mean, this is me. I'm turning 30 this year. I can't believe I'm saying that out loud.
can't
But
believe it
it's
either.
like one of those things where it's like a lot of people don't even get the privilege to just stop and pause. Like most people have to keep going and catch up in different ways. But I wanted to one unpack layoffs, what layoffs do, what they are, why it's good for businesses, etc. So my first question to you, why do companies do layoffs, Morgan?
So I've come prepared because I think that this is a very delicate subject for, and I would say for the last 5 years at this point, with COVID happening in 2020. And that's where I feel like the great resignation and mass layoffs are really happening because of the pandemic. And that's one of the reasons why, layoffs may happen because of something happening in the world, like economically, where you are forced to lay people off. So, like at a job I worked before, I worked in a safety consulting job, and one of our businesses was to have emissions testing systems, and we were in multi-state. So the governors of certain states said that our business was non-essential and that we had to close. So, like when governments or the state shut down, and that meant that we didn't have a choice but to lay people off, and we're not making money, so we can't pay you if we're not making money. And I think what COVID and just the pandemic in general just opened up to a lot of people is that a lot of businesses are living paycheck to paycheck.
Literally.
Literally. And so once you're not making any income and you literally can't do it because of a government restriction, there is no other way, because you will be out of compliance. You could be fined if you continue to let people work. And if you just don't have the money, you just don't have the money. And so that's one of them. Another reason is kind of like your business strategy, financial health. So like if you are going through a recession, or maybe the business has gone through some tough financial times, then sometimes layoffs are, and I hate to put it this way because I don't want to make it seem like profits over people, but sometimes there's a theory called, like, I don't know what it's called. It's escaping me, but it's basically like you do the greatest good for the greatest number of people. So sometimes it means, do you lay off 100 people or close the business? And then you ended up impacting 1,000 people. So there can be situations like that. There also can be restructures, reorganizations, advancements of technology. So for example, if a lot of people see in tech that there are factories or robots that can do a job faster than maybe a human being can do manually. So that can be a restructure because you have a new technology, like self-driving cars or things like that, where people think that like that's going to take over the Uber, the taxis. And then the last thing that I would say that impacts that is mergers and acquisition. If a company is growing and they're buying another company or combining with another company, there can be a lot of redundancies, meaning there's duplicative roles. So do you really need two product marketing directors, or do you really need two, financial accountants or controllers? So it doesn't make sense to have, if you're one business now, to have separate roles. And so naturally, with those types of things that happen, you won't have those duplicates because it's a cost. But I think the moral of the story is that layoffs are not personal ever. Rarely are they ever personal, and it shouldn't define you. So don't let that. It's a business decision. It has nothing to do with your capabilities or your contributions or people not liking you. It's usually business related.
I feel like it's so hard for people. Well, one, if you are going through a layoff, I feel like that statement is more harder to accept because you do take it. I would say, I think for me, of course, as I just shared, like almost 10 years with a company, I've never really attached myself as a business to me. Like, it's like, this is what I do in my day job, but I'm also someone completely different outside of work. And I feel like that probably helped propel my psyche for this moment, because I'm not trying to reevaluate what is my life outside of this. I do have a life outside of my 9 to 5 job. And like, to your point, layoffs really became a thing at the company that I was with. I want to say after 2023, like after the merger happened, I think duplicate roles were being removed, and they, I think, created a new business strategy around, hey, here are our targets and here are our financial targets. And here's what it's going to look like from a layoff perspective. So like, get used to these happening once or maybe even twice a year. The company that I was at, we had no inkling or even an idea of what layoffs were. We just knew that it happened at other places, but it damn sure was not at our business. So I feel like what you just said was a lot of gems, and also just a lot of truth to, one, for people to really think about as they do try to navigate this space of maybe even being laid off, or maybe just even having thoughts around like, what will my life be after I get laid off? Like, I feel like this job is so much of my life. Yes, the job is so much of your life, but you also should have hobbies and just activities and things that you do outside of it. I've never been a person to where I've allowed what I did during my day job to consume me so much to where I didn't know who I was outside of those four walls. Like, yeah, you are still you. Like, go find you. That is okay.
I think that's really important that you don't let your job define you as a person, because your job is not a personality trait. It's something that you do to make a living, but it shouldn't be the end all or be all. But there's also the human part that when you're going through it, it is affecting your livelihood. It is going to change your circumstances, and it's okay, mourn and grieve. But there's also the beauty in transition and change and being able to
Ooh,
pivot.
yes.
So
Yes, yes,
see it as,
yes.
something that's happening for me versus something that is happening to me. And usually, I can't speak for every company, but usually when you are laid off, especially if you're like tenured, you've been there for a long time, then most companies will give you like a severance package. So you'll get a little cushion to float you for a little bit. I mean, sometimes they can be very good. Sometimes it's like, oh, but something is better than nothing. And at the end of the day, file for unemployment, guys.
I would agree. I
No matter what.
right, no matter what. I feel like when it comes to severances, there's like things that come into play, right? Like you get contracts, you get legalities that you have to read through. Like some people even hire lawyers to really help them understand, what does this mean? Like there's a lot of words on this paper. I know I have to sign, but they're offering me some things to really go, but I need to understand. Can you break down? I know you just mentioned like sometimes for companies, they give you a combination of like however many years you've been here, plus your PTO, plus the impact that you've had on the team. Really, the calculation of your package could be different, and it would be based on the role. And to your point, based on the tenure and probably what you did with a company. Can you break severance packages down
Yeah.
just a little
So
bit?
severances will depend on the business. Every business and company has their own different way of doing things. Some people may give you 1 month of pay for 1 year of service. Some people could do 2 weeks or 1 week per year of service, and they may cap it at 20 years. So somebody who's been somewhere at 30 years, you might only get credited for 20 years. But I always believe in don't leave anything on the table. Always negotiate. Anything can be negotiated. If you Cobra insurance. So that's something that's really important. Making sure that you are protected and covered for at least a couple of months afterwards. That's something. Making sure that your PTO is paid out. Like I said, everything can be negotiated. They can either say yes or no, but I would always try, because you don't want to kick yourself in the foot that, man, I wish I would have asked for this. And now the period of your severance package. And usually there is a period of like maybe 45 days at minimum where you have time to review it. And we always recommend, especially a good HR professional will always recommend you to look it over with an attorney so that you feel comfortable. You shouldn't just sign your life away just because you feel like you're desperate, but always take the time to read. There's a lot of AI. If you need something to be explained, you can type it in ChatGPT and say, explain this paper to me like a kindergartner, so that you can understand what you're signing to. Because once you've signed it, then you usually have like a revocation period, which is like 7 days to say that you don't want it. But once you revoke it, it's off the table, and you may have to go to like other means to figure out how you're going to get maybe a negotiated severance amount. But it's a combination of your years of service, your COBRA, which is your insurance, making sure that you get any PTO, any bonuses that you might have earned, or any commissions. Like if you're in sales and you earn commission, you need to make sure that you're reading your commission statements, because usually you have to be employed in order to receive the commissions that you earn. But if you find yourself in like a severance period where you're trying to get a package, then I would negotiate and say, hey, I've earned some commission. Can that be included as well? I have X amount of commission coming up, and I know my current commission plan states this, but I would like, based off of my contributions to the company, all of the years that I've input, would you honor this? So I would make sure that I get everything, no money on the table, bonuses, all of that, just so that you can make sure you have the best package and the softest landing for yourself. But just also be aware that the answer could be no. If the answer is no, don't kick yourself in the foot. You tried, but I would leave with something.
Yeah, I would agree. I feel like that there's, to your point, if you don't really understand it, how do you get to understanding it? And some people probably don't have the means to maybe hire a lawyer. What would you say are some of the most like common mistakes when people sign things away? Like, what is something that was probably missed for just signing the dotted line and keep it moving, like with your life?
Yeah, I think people don't understand the terms of payment because like it could be a lump sum or it could be paid out over time, or something in the clause could say, should you seek other employment if you get another job quickly, then your severance will be ended. And so, those are some of the things that I would take my time, like what you said before. Everybody doesn't have the means to have an attorney, but there are lots of information and resources. And I would say use AI to your advantage. There's free AI, there's Microsoft Copilot, there's Gemini embedded into Google, and you can literally type something into the Google search bar and use ChatGPT for free. They have a free version that you can say, this is the terms in my severance agreement. Explain what this means. How will I get paid? And help me negotiate or counter because I think I deserve X. And AI can help you do that and help you write it and frame it where you kind of are your own personal attorney. But I mean, also talk to other people. There might be people in your community or social circles that have been through the same things and can review things. Like for me, it will be my grandmother or somebody that I may have worked with in the past. If you have friends in HR, I would ask them for their advice and opinions. I think, using your community, you never know who you have in your network who's been through some of the same things as you. And I believe in this power in people and just explaining things. Because even something as simple as like, I had got an eye surgery one time, a long time ago, and my eye was like leaking. And I
remember that.
Oh
Do you have like a sty?
It was a chalazion.
Oh, wait, what's the difference?
So a chalazion, it was like oil glands built up under my eyelid. So they had to drain it. They had to flip my eyelid open. I know this is probably TMI, but they didn't give me a prescription.
This ASMR to me.
And they didn't give me a prescription. And I was suffering. Like it was nighttime and I was like, my eye is leaking. And I was like, I don't know what to do. I can't sleep. And I literally called my grandma and I was like, Granny, I don't know what to do. Like the doctor's closed. She was like, they have an on-call doctor. And I was like, no, they don't. They're closed. They close at 5. She was like, every doctor's office has an on-call doctor. Call them and get the on-call doctor. And I literally called them and they wrote me a prescription to a 24-hour pharmacy and I got immediate relief. And I was like, oh my gosh. And I was grown. Like I was probably like 26 or 27 years old. And I'm like, I did not know that. But had I not asked my grandma about something so small as an on-call doctor, I would have probably been blind.
Yeah.
So
I think about some of the things that could happen when it comes to a business and businesses letting people go. What are some of the things that you think, from your perspective, that businesses can be doing better during the process of laying an employee off?
Well, I definitely think that remembering that this is a human being that you're talking to and treating people with respect and compassion, because it's never a right time to tell somebody that your employment is ending. Like even for me in my years of doing this, it's not a good feeling and it should feel bad if you are a great HR professional, because you should feel like this is impacting somebody's livelihood. They have a family, they have to make a means of a living. So I would say treating people with respect, answering questions that they may have, and being very comprehensive in the information that you're giving them, because it's a lot to process in one setting. And also what I think like a best practice is, and this is just for people and managers out there, is that you should never start a random call with the HR person and your manager on the line. It's like, hey, now it's like, okay, what's going on?
What's going on?
I think you should have the conversation initially and say, and I've invited somebody to talk to you about what's going to happen next. And she or he or they will be able to answer any questions that you might have, and let them take the time and the space that they need to get through the questions. So the call may be 30 minutes and maybe an hour long, but do not feel like you can't answer a question, because I've seen it so many times where people will just say, okay. And I'm like, you might not have questions in that moment because you're in a state of shock. But please don't forget to get people's contact information, follow up, ask those questions, think about it.
I always allude to, I'm always like, I don't have any questions right now, but are you okay if I circle back maybe within the next day or so? And I remember for me, I was definitely like, okay, I understand what's happening wholeheartedly and 100%. And I had already had a scheduled meeting, not a scheduled meeting, but I knew to reach out to my HR partner with any questions or anything that I needed to understand. I'll also give another piece. I think I can talk about this legally, but I feel like I had a few different options. I won't go too far. I'll leave it very generic. I had a few different options when it came to my package. And one of the options, I was talking to my HR partner and I was like, I want to do this. And she's like, okay. And she's like, well, we don't do that anymore. And I'm like, well, I really just want to be done. Like, I just want to do this and I just want to be done. Like, I don't want to continue. And she's like, well, it's not an option anymore, but here are your options. Like, it definitely made a big difference on me, especially navigating a layoff when the HR or my HR partner was compassionate and she knew that another human being was on the other side. I'm not saying that they're there to be your friend by any means, but they also have a job to do and a job to conduct and an exercise to perform, if you will. I don't know if those are the right words for that.
You can use those.
But it feels it's a task that you have to complete and that you have to support a ex-employee through, and that's part of your job. And I don't think I would want that job. How much of your job is that?
Oh my goodness, how much? I would say that didn't become a big part of my job until 2020. Like the first time I was at a company and I had to lay off 30 people in one day. And that was the first time that I ever done it. And this was just a temporary layoff. They're saying that the state will reopen in 30 days, but it could be longer. But we're hoping that it's 30 days. And it took longer than 30 days for us to open up. And it was really sickening to me, honestly, because one, there was a pandemic happening. You didn't have answers to things and people were afraid. And, you know, there were just grocery stores were empty and you couldn't go outside of your house. Everybody was just so like flustered. And to tell somebody, especially like people like in blue collar jobs that are working hard and they're hourly. So they don't work.
They depend on
every hour they work is what they get paid for. Versus somebody whose salary where if you work 80 hours, you're going to get paid the same thing. And also you call people individually. You don't just send them a letter because that's kind of cold, you know, but it's taxing. It's mentally draining because you have to do it in a span of a day. And so you're on the call and it's a shock to everybody. Fortunately, we were in a pandemic so that the people affected in that state, they understood because they were already watching the news and they knew that the state was shut down. And they were like, what can I do in the meantime? Like file for unemployment. You can file for partial unemployment. You can file for unemployment. We will approve it. Don't worry about it. And we also kept their benefits and reinstated so that they wouldn't have a lapse in coverage or anything like that. So
the COBRA?
No, we kept them on their full benefits.
Okay,
they just weren't getting paid.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think about just the process of the layoff and how with that, some packages include like, hey, we'll still keep you on unemployment for 2 months or 3 months. And some packages are like, tomorrow is your last day. Your benefits will continue for about a month. And then thereafter will be 1 month of COBRA. You'll have a continuation of X, Y, and Z of what you were making here, maybe plus unemployment. But I feel like companies have definitely built things into place to where they can not necessarily deny unemployment, but they continue your benefits of an employee without really continuing you as an employee. I think for the news to land a little bit softer. So I think they've definitely taken a compassionate approach to be like, you know what, this is a very steep step in a livelihood and it takes away a lot from them. So how can we really offset not just the cost, but really offset the drastic change that's about to happen for them? I do have a question for you.
Yes.
When you were laying off 30 people, how far in advance did you know?
The day, usually maybe 24 hours in advance.
As an HR partner, you knew that day that you had to do it that day.
Usually, like if there's a bit, I want to clarify for this, for like HR is a business partner. We do not make business decisions. We make business recommendations. But there are your CFOs, your finance people, your business leaders who, operate or are responsible for a P&L. And I'm sure they're consulting legal for risk and things like that and compliance. And at the point that sometimes I'm not privy to those conversations until I've been told this is what the business has decided to do and this is what I need you to support. And at that point, we're supporting. There are times where I am aware that, long term, this is what we plan to do. And you may know about it, but there's never like, we're going to do this on X date. Usually it's kind of like, I know when you know. Maybe I have like 24 hours, maybe at most a week in advance before. You usually don't know until it's time to make a decision. And sometimes that decision is a meeting and now this is what you got to do.
Now this is the time. I will say my experience was I got a very coded email from my manager like the evening of. It was like 6:30. And she was like, I'd love to connect before you head into the office. So then I'm already like thinking like my brain is going. Yeah. And I told my husband and I was like, I got a pretty cryptic email invite and I'm not really sure what it is. And we talk about like layoffs and stuff like that, especially in corporate America. And his first response was, "We'll be okay." And I was like, "Oh, I love you."
I love that.
I feel like also at the same time though, like as a person on the other end who's receiving that news, like so many things can happen. Like you could be trying to use AI, like what exactly does this mean? My manager put something on here. But to your point, like to where you sometimes get a week's notice, you sometimes get 24 hours. I think for my specific situation and experience, my manager set it up. She didn't invite anyone else. I think because we probably had that relationship to where she probably could share something. But my first response again was like, I am okay. But I felt like she took it harder than I did. Like she was actually crying.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, "Why are you crying?" And she, further explained why. And she was definitely a leader that was compassionate just when dealing with people, but also like she had kids and our relationship had grown from where we had started up until that point. So I guess my question for you would be like, can you give three top pieces of advice from a business perspective, but also from like an employee perspective that's like going through it? Like, what would be your top three pieces of advice for that?
I would say one for both parties, from the people delivering the news to the person receiving the news. It's an emotional thing, but don't get contentious and don't let it turn into kind of a back and forth, because usually if you're having that conversation, the decision has already been made and there isn't anything usually that you're going to say to kind of turn this the decision around. So if you get into like, well, who did this or you didn't do this to me, I don't think that's the right approach to take. Although I do want to acknowledge that you are a human being. You're feeling a
Yeah.
lot of emotions
Yeah.
and it's hard to hear something like that. However, the reality is the conversation becomes less about what we're talking about and more about how you're behaving. And if you're getting emotional, you don't get to get all of your questions answered, because now we've diverted and now I have to calm you down. And now, and I've seen it in other organizations and stuff where the conversation totally is, we're going to end this call now because, I said what I said, let's move on. It's hard because nobody wants to react that way. But I would say try your best to listen as much as you can and write your questions down and try to answer them in a way that doesn't divert the attention from you getting what you need out
I
of the
agree.
question. Another one I would say for someone going through it is, asking questions, just if you're not clear, if you don't understand, don't sit there and let somebody kind of jargon you or let things go over your head and say, explain this to me like a kindergarten. I need you to break this down. Give me an example of what that looks like. So when is my last day technically? What are you going to say if somebody calls for a reference? Ask those questions at that point. What does my insurance look like? When is my insurance going to stop? So asking questions. And then I guess the third one I would say from an employee standpoint is,
Two's enough. I think those were good, but I also think that like you shared some earlier in our talk about, again, just asking questions, but also getting like a third party involved around like, hey, like I don't really understand this. Can you help me? Like even hiring a lawyer to help you.
Also, outplacement services. So some companies will help you find your next job. Make it asking, if you have a good rapport with your manager or your leaders, like, hey, I would like for you, can you write me a reference before I head out? So that you can have something that if you're not taking a break and you're going to jump right back into things, you'll have your contacts, it'll be fresh, and you have everything you need to be moving on.
Yeah, I did a lot of that. I asked not a lot of questions because just to your point, like it was a decision that was already made. Like I think that was actually part of my leaders talk track. Like it was a leadership decision to eliminate your position. I was okay, girl. But again, I think for me, I just smile almost during the entire process of it because I had never attached myself and I was more optimistic about like, okay, like life goes on. But it's so unfortunate that not a lot of people get to experience that. So I feel like when we do deal with people, like you're thinking, or we deal with people and all of them in every single dimension possible. And I feel like people lean on to faith. Like some people may even question God, like, why me? Why should I have to experience this? How do you fit faith into your HR profession?
That's a very great question because as an HR professional, you really can't, like, I worked with someone who was very faith based to a detriment and let their faith guide their decision making instead of letting logic and facts guide it. But I would say for me, like, spirituality is very important in my life. I grew up in the church. My grandmother is a pastor. And my grandma always says you can pray or you can worry, but you can't do both. And if God is for us, who can be
Amen.
against us?
Amen.
And no matter what, the money will come. If you believe in the power of the Lord, like I do, I
Like
believe
I
in God.
do.
I believe that the Lord will take care of me because He's been taking care of me my whole entire life. And you got to have faith the size of a mustard seed. And you really have to your faith has to be delusional to know that no matter what, this will shake me. It may rock me, but I'm not going to let it break me because I know that there's something better out there for me. And this is happening because there's something different. I need to pivot. There's something else that I need to be doing. And unfortunately, or fortunately, this is the end of this chapter, but this does not mean that this is the end of my life. And I'm not going to let this define my whole outlook because you have so much life to live versus just being beholden to a job.
I agree. I will say also, just to go just a little bit deeper, like even with faith, I think God helped me propel my psyche to be way far in advance to receive it. But I can't say that that's very much the same for a lot of people. Like even some of the messages that I got, like I think internally people had heard the news or had heard about a number of folks that were impacted across, because this actually happened in HR. But they were like, I heard the devastating news. Like I'm here, but I'm on the receiving end. I'm like, this is not devastating news. Don't bring that to me. You know what I mean? And I wish more conversations about layoffs and about people's psyche and their health could more so become a curiosity versus I know where you're going through. So like, I want to
Absolutely.
push that on you. And it's like, I think I only responded to one, maybe two people. And they were like, will we still get to connect? I'm like, I'm on pause for right now, but I don't want to have anything to do with this. But I say that to say, if someone that you know is going through a layoff, please just become curious. Ask, how are they? Don't assume that like this is devastating news. Like some people were praying for a layoff. Like some people were like, I don't have the strength and I don't have the words to say I quit. So I'm going to go out in a way that is going to be, sometimes it may be beneficial for me, but please just be curious in the space and don't automatically assume what's happening for them internally. What would you say about that?
I would say also if someone going through something, you need to be intentional with how you communicate with them because some people are just trying to be nosy and they just want to know what did you get? What did they say? Who else is impacted? And it's rude, it's very insensitive because it's not happening to you. And if you're not there to offer support or some type of curiosity to understand. And also, if you don't have a relationship with that person, why are you reaching out to them? Like,
That part.
It's very weird because it's like you've never talked to me before. We worked together for the past 5 years, and now all of a sudden you're reaching out to me and like sending your condolences and let me know if you want to talk. Well, you haven't let me know if I want to talk when I had a funeral when I was on bereavement. So why would I talk to you about a life-changing event? So I think just be respectful of people and give them space too, because they're still processing it just as much. And if you've had a relationship with people where they will come to you, you will talk, it will be a right time to reach out and things like that. But don't do it just because you're being curious and being nosy to get in somebody's business. I think that's just disrespectful.
Yeah, I agree. I love kind of leading with empathy, but again, also leading with curiosity and not assumptions, because assumptions can be very hurtful, especially when you're coming across as like, oh, I think I know it all, or you're giving just unsolicited advice. It's like, no, girl, now is not the time. I think like last week I was having a conversation with a friend and I had shared the news and I think something else came up and I was like, you know what? I'm not in a space to discuss that right now. And I would rather not. And the person actually kept pushing and pushing and pushing. And I found myself kind of like going back and forth. And to your point, it's like now the conversation isn't even what I'm sharing about. It's more about like my response or your response or whatever the case may be. And it's like, I don't want to be a part of this. And I actually had to end the phone call. I ended it very respectfully, but I was like, you know, I love you. This doesn't change our relationship, but I can't continue the conversation right now. And I'll talk to you on another day.
Respect people's boundaries and respect what people are going through. And at the end of the day, this is a human being that's processing something. So don't badger, don't press or probe. If you can, use your common sense or emotional intelligence to see If you're asking somebody a question and they're being kind of tight-lipped, give them space, respect their space, and respect their boundaries. And that's being a good friend.
Yes, that is definitely being a good friend. And being a good friend, you actually just led me into my next question. Okay. Are you dating as an HR professional?
Oh my God.
Do you date in the workplace? Do you date in the workplace? And have you?
Do not date in the workplace anymore.
Learned your lesson.
I've learned my lesson as a young gal. Honestly, like I probably dated like 4 people in the workplace, and this was when I was really young.
But they were in different branches though, right? If I remember correctly.
Yes. However,
but you were working for
HR.
Got you. So you support everyone.
I support everyone technically, and I wasn't doing anything against the policy, okay, for the people out there. But for the date checkers and the fact checkers, don't go try to change or fact check nothing. The dates align, okay, and the policy align. Exactly. And honestly, the first time that I dated somebody in the workplace, we dated for maybe like 4 months or so, and it ended very fast. And I was very immature and very not like, he was like 7 years older than me. And I don't want to say it's embarrassing because he might see this, but
that's all right.
I think he was thinking that once we separated or ended things, he thought that I would be like, oh my gosh, pressed and like making it awkward. But it was actually the other way around. Like, cause I was chill. Like we would be in meetings. But he made my life a living hell until I left that job. Like literally he would call my phone, come to my office, like make me do things for him that I would do for a regular employee, but doing it like just to
inspire
with me. And I just was like, I'm so sad that I did this because I can't and then
you can't get out of it.
What's crazy is that my boss at the time, she was encouraging me to date him, which is so weird. And she was like, oh, I think he's such a nice guy for you. And I'm just like, you don't even know that.
Girl,
that I'm going through. Girl, I'm fighting for my life. Literally, one time I cussed him out on my work phone. Literally, like, cussed him out. And I slammed the phone down. And she walked past my office because she was always listening to me. And she was like, who were you talking? Was that? I was like, I was talking to my sister. She just pissed me off. And I was like, oh my gosh, and then we went on a trip. And it was just like, it was just
too much.
It was just too much. And I was just like, I will never date. And I don't want to say I never dated anybody, but I never really seriously dated somebody after that because it was just a nightmare.
So you would say 10 out of 10, don't do it.
10 out of 10. Well, I wouldn't say that now. I just feel like that might have been just a bad egg because, I don't even consider dating this person, but, I had chemistry with somebody and I hung out with somebody, but we never like dated. But I always feel uncomfortable. I feel like it's easier for somebody outside of HR to do it. Gotcha. Because I'm always feeling like either somebody's going to disrespect the boundary or ask me about something that I can't really talk about. And I don't want it to be about like my job it's not a personality trait. It's what I do. I'm a real person outside of work. So get to know me, not the HR person. But I would say as long as you ain't violate no policies, have at it. But just know that it could get real sticky. And especially if you are, and of course I wasn't in a leadership position or anything like that at the time. I was like a little runt, a little runt. But when you get into more senior roles, then I would say don't do it just because you get into like, I don't want to say nepotism, but like, what is it when you have fraternization? So like it favorites and it just
becomes bad for the business too.
Yeah.
And like sometimes like I ask you, was it hard to like separate?
Yeah, because you lose credibility too. Like for me as an HR professional, if you date in the workplace, you instantly lose credibility because they're like, you're in HR, you probably giving them a raise, even though like, I don't give anybody a raise. Your manager is giving you a raise.
Yeah.
But it's just like, and then I felt like I just couldn't be free. Like I felt uncomfortable. I'm looking around like, I'm in the car. Like, no, that ain't me. Don't take no pictures. Don't post it. And he actually was like, you don't really like me. Like, and I was just like, no, I do like you. He's like, why you don't ever call me? I'm like, because you always calling me. And I love that about you. But I was just like, I don't want to be seen. I don't want to be tied to you because I don't want anybody to, because my job was really important to me.
Yeah.
And I loved my job. And
I think you're trying to prove yourself too. You're very, very young.
Yes, I'm very professional. And anybody who's worked with me, because I feel like as an HR, it's very hard to have friends in the company because you just never know what people's motives are. And people are always fishing for something. And it's hard to find genuine people.
Yeah.
But it's possible. And the people that respect you will be able to have friendship. You'll be able to have friendships with, but it's hard.
Yeah, I agree. I would say I've definitely learned a few of these things just from experience, not dating, but more so like people and their motives, whether you're in HR or whatever the case may be. And some people want to be attached to you and they want to be attached to your name because you have a different level of access maybe to a senior leader or to different programs or whatever the case may be. And I remember, I think like somebody tried to like play me once and be like, what does this person make? And I'm like, why would I tell you that? And why would you ask me that? Like,
how disrespectful.
But to your point, you have to be very aware of who you're inviting around your circle, who you're letting in, who your inner circle is, who's fishing for something. But I wasn't dating or losing credibility. I thought that was a friend when really it was just like a colleague and somebody that I like laughed with from time to time and work. So they thought that it was much more than it wasn't. But I definitely had to put the person in their place.
Yeah, I don't reckon. I say caution against it because you don't want to shit where you eat it. Like,
okay,
just
play it safe.
9 billion people in the world. You don't have to find somebody from your job. You can find somebody else.
You find somebody else. In China.
That becomes your relationship too.
True.
What are you talking about?
Work. I know this couple that used to work in the same office, and I'm like, yeah, it's hard as it is. Like, I need a break from you.
Okay. Please.
We are not riding together this morning.
I want a real work husband, not you.
That is a thing. That is a thing. I have like wondered, I wonder if my husband now, like if he worked in corporate America, if he would have a work husband, but I'm like, I would feel like pretty secure if he did. I'm like, shit, it's flirtatious nature, whatever. But like work wives and work husbands are an actual thing. And I didn't know that until this girl was like, you're my work husband. And I'm like, you're my work wife. And she was in HR. So I felt a little bit comfortable. And it was crazy because she was actually the first person that I reached out to after the layoff had happened. And she's still with me too. She's just super kind, super great, and super respectful too. Yeah, I have enjoyed this. Yes. And I'm so glad we got to do this. Y'all, I don't think I did tell you, but different background. We got some new curtains. We upgraded. I'm just kidding. As you all know, like my podcast is mobile. So I have been going around the United States recording with people. And I invited my sister, Morgan, who is just such a HR diva and knows all the ins and outs. If not, she knows how to find it, who I just respect so much, not even just from a professional perspective, but from a personal perspective. And I'm glad that I have you in my corner. You're always rooting for me and cheering me on. And I feel like if I owe a thanks to anyone for this podcast, it would actually be you.
Oh, God.
Seriously, I remember one time, I think it was in 2020, maybe 2021, and I had ran the idea of a podcast by you. And I think months had came by, and then like you had asked, what's going on with the podcast? And I'm like, I got to do this. I got to do this. I got to do this. And she was like, she led with compassion, but she ended with, so stop with the excuses.
Hello.
Next time I see you, I want to see a draft and I want to see this. And I was like, okay. She means business. So just from me to you, thank you for inspiring me and pushing me to my best potential. And I wouldn't trade it for anything.
I love you so much.
And
y'all download this podcast on all platforms. You got Spotify,
YouTube, Spotify, iHeartRadio, iTunes, wherever you get your podcast. And this video will be up on YouTube. But again, we just thank you for tuning in to learn more about HR, how it fits into businesses, how layoffs operate, dating in HR, dating in the workplace, etc. Morgan, I always like to leave with a question.
Oh, God. I'm scared.
What's new with you and how are you finding your light in this world, in this dark world?
Such a good question because I don't know about you all, but just watching the news every day is a little depressing because every day it seems like it's just something that's exaggerated or something that's just not happy. But I feel like, what am I doing to find my light? Right now, I'm doing Pilates.
She celebrates her 100th class.
I know. I'll have my 100th class next Saturday. And think y'all don't know me, so y'all don't know this, but
They do know you. Hold on.
Well, y'all don't know that I was in a boot, okay?
Yeah.
That I tore 2 tendons in my ankle and I have a contusion last spring. And so for a long time, I couldn't do anything. I couldn't drive for like 3 to 4 months. And I was in a boot. So Pilates was the only thing that I could do to kind of stay active so I don't look like a loaf of bread. So it's so hard. And it's like, it was so motivating. Like I took one class in February. I hated it. I was like, I will never come back. But it was just it was something like I can do hard things and I can do this and I feel good. And I hate working out. Like it's not fun, but I like the feeling of working out afterwards. And the fact that I do solid core. So if you know, you know, solid core is like Pilates on crack. Honestly, it's not traditional Pilates. It's like, oh my gosh, so intense. I can't believe that I'm making it to my 100th class and I feel so strong. And I feel so good about myself. And I just feel like what the other things that I'm doing is just now traveling more. Because I've had in 2020, my New Year's resolution was to travel. But then, of course, that kind of took a backseat.
We took a trip.
We did take a trip.
We took a trip to Philly. Shout out to Al.
I love you, Al. And, you know, I'm actually going to Philly in May. I'm doing a girls trip to Philly, like kind of like a eat, pray, love, turn up with a couple of my girlfriends.
I have to tell Al.
Fun. Yes, please. Is he? Okay, yeah.
He's in Seattle, but you know he goes to Philly. I think I'm planning a summer trip up there.
Okay, so we're going Memorial Day weekend to
I'll be in PV.
To kick the summer off. So that is what I want to get back to is traveling and just doing more things like fun things and dressing up because I've worked remote for such a long time. Now I go into an office like 3 to 4 times a week. And at first I dreaded it, but now I actually look forward to it because I can actually put on clothes. Fortunately, I'm not required to be in an office from a set time or a set day. It's very, very flexible. But it's just good to like get up and just, I feel like that putting clothes on, looking good, feeling good, just makes it a different, like cooking food. I have a new book that I have, Beets, Bacon, and Bad Dates. So being more creative.
We'll drop the link.
We'll drop the link
in the description.
And I'm doing a book tour. So in March, at the end of March. So I'm super excited.
I can't wait
to share it with you all. And that is all about my dating life, my love life, the things from the playground to where I am today as an adult. And so those are the things that I'm doing. I'm getting back into it because I feel like these last couple of years, I've kind of like been a hermit crab and now I'm ready to be outside.
I love it. Yes, to outside. #. I agree. I'm definitely trying to find joy by traveling more. So I think we have that in common. Getting dressed up and just being intentional and just how I'm showing up, whether it be showing up to places 15 minutes before and really just get my bearings before you coming in, rushing and doing this and doing that. But I love that you're doing that. And I'm so glad that you are pouring into yourself in that way. Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, thank you all again for tuning in. We can't wait to share this with you and we can't wait to just talk to you here within the next week or so. So without further ado, we love y'all. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share with your friends. And again, this podcast is for people that are living in their truth, living transparently, and living truthfully and honestly within themselves. That's really trying to use their life experiences to create the life that they want. So if you're not doing that, I don't know why you actually made it to the end, but we just thank you. Seriously.
Thank you.
Until next time. Bye.